Years ago, which illustrates a very central theme connected to this evening and really reflective of the theme we have been developing earlier this evening. The Lubavitcher Rebbe had a custom each year, the day before Yom Kippur, on the eve of Yom Kippur, in the afternoon, he would distribute honey cake, lekach, for all those who wish to come and get a piece of cake, bless them with a shana tova sukkah, with a good and sweet year. And for those who remember the scene, the line would extend down Eastern Parkway, usually till Brooklyn Avenue, would go up Brooklyn Avenue. And this was the day before Yom Kippur, Tovshin Mem, 1979. There was an individual Jew, a Hasidic Jew, who decided to come and get a piece of cake and blessing from the Lubavitcher Rebbe on this eve of Yom Kippur. This Jew was a Chassid, a Hasidic Jew from the group known as Satmar. He was a Satmar Chassid. He lived in Williamsburg. And you know, over the years, especially during that time, there were some profound ideological differences between Chabad Lubavitch and Satmar, particularly in the issue of how to approach secular Jews, how to deal with secular Jews, whether to have relationships with secular Jews, and so on and so forth. There were some very serious ideological differences between these two groups. In 1979, in the summer, on the 26th of Av, the famous Rebbe of Satmar, Rabbi Yoelish Teitelbaum, of blessed memory, passed away. It took a year and a half till the movement appointed his nephew as his successor, Rabbi Moshe Teitelbaum, who passed away a few years ago. In between, in the interim between his passing and the appointment of his nephew, there was no Rebbe, there was no leader in Satmar. This Satmar Jew wanted to receive a blessing from a tzaddik for the new year, for the high holidays. So he made the trip to Crown Heights and got online to go to the Rebbe's room in 770 Eastern Parkway and receive his honey cake and blessing. Murphy's Law, Mazel, or what the Baal Shem Tov would call divine providence. Who's standing in front of him? In front of him is standing not only a secular Jew, but a hippie. And not just a hippie, but what you might call a Mahadrin, Mina Mahadrin hippie, which means a truly authentic hippie, following all of the customs and traditions and rituals of the hippies. May we say that his hair extended quite long, and his general look was one to which the Satmar Chassid of Williamsburg was extremely unaccustomed to. They engage in a conversation, and when he realizes that this secular hippie is also going to the Rebbe, just as he's going to the Rebbe, he becomes really turned off, thinking to himself, if that man is your Rebbe, he can't be my Rebbe. How can you and me, how can we be in the same boat? How can we be included in the same group, in the same category? He's looking at this person and he's disgusted, literally. From his perspective, he is disgusted with Chabad, with Lubavitch. He's an ultra orthodox, religious Hasidic Jew. And here is a Jew from a very different world, in a very different perspective, in a totally opposite Weltanschauung. Are these the products of Chabad? Are these the students of the Lubavitcher Rebbe? Are these the people he's proud of? This is what he has to show. This is what all their outreach is about. He regrets coming. And yet, he's there already. He wants a blessing. Even if this person can't give him a blessing, certainly won't hurt him, won't harm him. And I guess a good piece of honey cake is always nice to have. So he stays online. It's a long line. It took time. And finally, his turn comes. In front of him is this secular Jew, the hippie. The Rebbe gives this Jew, the secular Jew, a piece of honey cake with a luminescent face, a radiant face. He blesses him for the new year. And then he gives a piece of cake to this Hasidic Jew from Satmar, and he blesses him for the new year. And this man begins moving away to go home, to leave and go home. But the Rebbe calls him back. And the Rebbe asks him in Yiddish, "Du bist a Satmar, a Chassid? Are you a Chassid of Satmar?" "Yeah, I am." "Yismach Moshe, lernst du? Do you learn the book Yismach Moshe?" For the benefit of those who don't know what the book is, I'll explain. Yismach Moshe is a commentary on the Torah that was authored by a man named Rabbi Moshe Teitelbaum. He was the rabbi of Uhel in Hungary, and he is considered the founding father of the dynasty of Satmar. The Yismach Moshe, his book is called Yismach Moshe. Let Moses rejoice, because the author's name was Moshe, Rabbi Moshe Teitelbaum. And this is a classic work which is studied in the Satmar movement continuously, like Tanya is studied in Chabad. So the Rebbe asks this Jew, "You're a Satmar, a Chassid? Are you a follower of Satmar?" "Yes." "Yismach Moshe, you study?" "Yes, I study Yismach Moshe." "Do you remember the story that the Yismach Moshe presents in his introduction to his commentary on Tehillim?" He has a book on Psalms. It's called Tehillah LaMoshe, and in the introduction he writes a story. Do you remember that story? The Jew remembered the story. So the Rebbe needed only to remind him the story, the end of the story. Let me tell you the story. The story that Rabbi Moshe Teitelbaum transcribes in that book goes like this. There was a Jew, a man by the name of Reb Yitzchak, who passed away and came to heaven. Who welcomes him in heaven? None other than Rashi. Rashi, Rabbi Shlomo Yitzchaki, the great biblical commentator, the well-known Jew from France, Germany, the Rabbon Shal Yisrael, the rabbi of all of Israel, the teacher of all of Israel. Rashi comes to greet Rabbi Yitzchak. And when Rabbi Yitzchak asks Rashi, why this honor? He says, it's for your son, who was still alive. He had a son whose name was Rabbi Yechiel Michal of Zlotchev. He's known as Rabbi Michal Zlotchever. He was a student of the Baal Shem Tov, the founder of the Hasidic movement. He was a very great Jew, a great man. His name was Rabbi Michal Zlotchever. And his father passed away, Rabbi Yitzchak, and Rashi comes to greet his father in heaven for the honor of his son, Rabbi Michal Zlotchever. And Rashi says, there is something about your son that I am eager to discover. Your son's service of God generates a tremendous commotion in heaven. Your son's service of the Almighty causes tremendous positive energy in heaven. God has nachas, and he quells from your son's work like nobody else. And I want to know, what is unique about your son's service of God? What makes him special? What sets him apart? So Rabbi Yitzchak says, my son sits and studies Torah at every possible moment. Day and night he studies Torah. Rashi says, that's extraordinary. But there are other Jews who are completely immersed in the study of Torah, and yet I don't see that their behaviors and their life generates such powerful delight in God's heart. There must be something additional for that. So he describes his son's prayers. His prayers are done with every fiber of his being. He almost expires in prayer. That's how deeply connected he becomes during prayer. And here again, Rashi says, I know of a few others. And then he discusses his son's tremendous discipline when it comes to the material world. He fasts. He shuns material pleasures. And here again, Rashi says there are others.